Welcome to another edition of The Best Business Minds, where we interview business leaders and academics that write thought-provoking books. I'm Marc Kramer, serial entrepreneur who consults with family businesses and entrepreneurs. And for the next year, I'll be teaching entrepreneurship at Vinh University in Hanoi, Vietnam, which is where I'm currently at. Today's guest, please welcome Steve Blue, author of Metamorphosis, From Rust Belt to High Tech in the 21st Century World. Steve, welcome.
Well, thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. I really enjoyed the book. It was a different type of read than I've seen a lot of the books that I have, especially talking about what you went through working with these different manufacturing companies. So let's do this. Let's have you start off by telling about your professional background and how you got to where you are right now.
Well, first and foremost, I'm a CEO, and I've been a CEO for probably the last 26 or 27 years. Prior to that, I was in senior leadership positions for, I don't know, in total 35, in total over 40 years, I've been in leadership positions, most of those in senior positions from very small companies, startups to Fortune 500 companies. And so I've been so many places and so many companies and so many organizations inside the companies that there are very few things in the business world that I haven't seen. I mean, I've kind of seen it all. And in all those years, I also became a professional speaker where I deliver addresses on, leadership and basically how to take Rust Belt companies and turn them into mega earning Goliaths. I've done speeches in the Harvard Law School. I've done them in Carnegie Hall. I've done them at the United Nations, just to name a few. Along the way, I wrote 5 books. One of them was a bestseller in 2 days. And the last one, of course, is the one we're talking about today. I started a company in Mexico one time to do trade shows, industry events. And I had a lot of money on the line, a lot of my own personal money on the line. You probably know how this works. If you're going to have a trade show, you have to guarantee a certain number of rooms with a hotel. You have to guarantee, so it was a big amount of money. I didn't really have it if it went south. And fortunately, it was a huge success. And after that success, I thought, well, I got this international thing down pat. So I formed an internet television broadcasting company. This is like 30 years ago, before the technology was as easy as it is today. Right. And I did the inaugural broadcast in Havana, Cuba, and it was an absolute and total failure, an absolute total failure. In those days, I don't know how it is today, but you could get to Cuba legally if you got a license from the Office of Foreign Assets Control, which I did because at the time I was a publisher of a trade magazine, and I couldn't get a film crew from the United States to film the event because they weren't allowed to come. So I hired a crew out of Mexico and then brought them into Cuba, and it was a very, very complicated situation. But the thing I learned about those 2 events is you never know if an idea that you have is going to be a success or not until you get it out there into the world. And there's a lot of opinions, always a lot of opinions about what's going to work and what's not going to work. And I tell CEOs all the time, you won't know until you actually launch it. So launch the darn thing and see what happens.
I can't agree with you more. You can do all the research you want. You can do all the surveys, focus groups, everything. But until that thing is launched, you have no idea, because people will say, oh my God, I love this idea. I think this is amazing.
Yeah.
But when it comes time to actually write the check, then all of a sudden, well, I think it's amazing, but I don't know it's for me. It's not absolutely necessary for us. I've got some opposition internally, whole slew of excuses that you just don't know. I mean, how many CEOs do you know that told you, I never thought this thing was going to be success and it was a huge hit, but this other thing I started, I thought that was going to be a blockbuster, and it turned out to be a total dud, right?
Yep. You don't know until you get it out there. And that's why you can't be afraid to get it out there. I mean, I've had a lot of successes in my career, and I've had a few failures in my career. Fortunately, I've had more success than failure, but you just don't know until you get it out there and find out what it's all about and let the market decide.
Absolutely. So why did you write this book?
Well, I brought my own company at the time through what I called a Metamorphosis. It was a Rust Belt company with a lot of good old line products that were still kind of profitable. Patents had expired, all kinds of reasons why you should look to the future and figure out, what am I going to do in the future? Because, I tell CEOs all the time, if you rest on your laurels and hope that the products that you have now are going to carry into the future, I can tell you it's not. I can tell you for absolute fact that's not going to. So I brought my own company through the Metamorphosis, and I thought it would be good to let other CEOs that might be in similar situations, Rust Belt companies, legacy products, that how I did it. And I actually didn't write the book until I'd actually been through the thing. And I just thought that this would be valuable lessons for other CEOs that are contemplating the same thing. It's scary. If you're going to totally transform your company from Rust Belt to high tech, it's a very, very scary proposition. Most CEOs really don't know how to do it. And if you, at the time when I wrote the book, which is, I think, 2019, if you Google that, you wouldn't find any books, you wouldn't find many, if any at all, that would actually write the prescription on how to do it. So I took them through all the steps, step by step, as to how it ought to work, the challenges and obstacles that I encountered along the way, and kind of how to triangulate them. So I thought that would be good for people to know.
I would think private equity guys would be all over this book.
Well, yeah, I would think so too. I haven't gotten many calls from them, but yeah, because they've got Rust Belt companies and they want to do something with them and they want to get their money out. But private equity guys are pretty slick in terms of what they buy and what they invest in. And they got a batting average, and they know their batting average is whatever it is, and they know that these 5 acquisitions, 2 of them are going to go belly up, 3 of them are going to go phenomenal. And so I think they could learn a lot from it.
So it seems the book most benefits middle market companies, maybe 500 million or greater. You remind the reader new product development and change will be costly and it will take 8 years.
Yeah.
With all the new tech, can't the process be faster? And why is it so long?
Well, that's a good question. I just pegged 8 years. It could be 6. And you know what, Mark? It is never about the technology when you do something like this. It's never about the technology in new product development. It's never about the technology in market entry. It's always about the people. Technology is easy. I mean, the technology curve is kind of known, all right? You can slide the number out a couple of years or bring it in a couple of years, but when you go through the stages of technology development, then maturation of a product to the end life, if you will, end of life, that's pretty known. And people can predict that, but what you can't predict are the inside and outside things that will happen to you. First of all, when you introduce a new product, especially if you're a Rust Belt company, most people inside the company will hate it. They will absolutely hate the idea. They won't go along with it. They won't cooperate with it. They won't, they just aren't going to come along with the program. And then along the way, during this 8 years or 6 years or 4 years or whatever it is, bad things are going to, a few good things will happen. Lots of bad things will happen in the marketplace. Your competition may react in a way that you didn't anticipate. Your customers may react in a way that you didn't anticipate. And so the reason I used the 8 years was mostly to counsel CEOs on, if you're going to go down this path, it's not going to happen in the next quarter. It's not going to happen in the next year. So you need to prepare your organization, prepare your board, prepare your shareholders that you're in it for the long haul. And so, guys, don't expect something in the next quarter like they do on the street, because it's not going to happen in the next quarter. And that's pretty much why I pegged the number. And if you look at the transition in my own company to high technology, it was about 6-7 years from the first time we ideated and it was actually a commercial success. It's a long, long haul.
What's your definition of disruption in business?
Well, the short answer is competition like a bat out of hell. You got to surprise them. You gotta understand your booth, and they kind of know what you're doing. And if you do things slowly, that gives your competition a chance to react. So I like to disrupt in a very quick way, in a very dramatic way, and in a way that puts them back on their heels so they don't know what to do next.
Can you explain your equation? Legacy industry plus digital error equals digitally refractory industry. What do you mean by that?
You know, I I read that in your question notes. I actually didn't write that one. Jedediah Ue, who wrote the foreword to my book, wrote that quote. So I honestly don't know what he means by that.
I thought it was interesting.
So it wasn't
Uh,
me. Yeah.
at least you're not taking credit for something you didn't write.
No, no, I'm
Uh,
not going to do that.
you write about what technology tools winners will need. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example. In my company, when we started down the technology path to get the organization in a position where they could innovate in a big way, not just incremental innovation, a new brand of toothpaste, put something else in the product to incrementally improve it. You have to give people the tools that they need to be able to do that. And what I did a couple of things. I brought in the ex-chief creativity officer of the QVC network, who is now a consultant in innovation. And people thought I was crazy because I'm bringing a shopping network guy in to teach all the principles of innovation to all of my employees. And the idea is innovation is innovation is an innovation. I don't care if it's in a shopping network or a manufacturing organization. So he rode shotgun with us and trained every single one of our employees on the principles of innovation, starting from the ground up, starting with, uh, trying to think of ideas and, call them out and so forth. And then he'd give them problems to solve or opportunities to pursue, but he was riding shotgun with them the whole way. And after a while, people start to, and this is the organization, by the way, not just engineers. If you run a manufacturing company, everybody should innovate. Not just the engineers, not just the marketing people, but the people in the factory floor got a lot of ideas that you would never know about unless you tap those. And so after about a year, people really started to like the idea of innovation. And one day, one of my employees came up to me and he said, you know what? We really like this innovation stuff. We could do a better job of it if we had a dedicated space to do it in. So I said, let me make sure I understand this now. You want me to take part of the factory, which I actually make money on, and turn it into a think tank. Is that what you're suggesting? And about that time, he's wishing he hadn't opened his mouth. And I said, I love the idea. So I spent about $500,000 to create a space that was built for and encourages and facilitates innovation and thinking about new ideas and so forth. And so that's what I talk about when you have to give them the tools. And every now and again, I get a question, usually from one of my shareholders, how much money have you made off that? And my answer is always the same. That space has created a couple of really big ideas and really big innovations and a million little ones that are hard to add up and probably not worth quantifying. Because if you look at the factory as an example, you want to innovate in your factory because you can reduce costs, you can increase throughput, all kinds of things you can do. So don't leave the factory out of the equation. And what happens now is our people anywhere in the company are free to go off and innovate anytime they want. They pick the people they want to innovate with. They pick the problems they want to innovate. She said, God rest her soul, she said, how do you know those people are actually working? I said, you know what, Mom? I said, if I have to wonder if they're working, I got the wrong people.
I am agree with you 100% about that. When one of the businesses I ran, we used to print in our booklets, so when people got hired, they knew this, every idea and where it came from. And so we had a receptionist who told us that their grandfather worked in the mailroom of a company, and that every time they paid a vendor, they would send a letter to the vendor thanking them for the work that they did and telling them what kind of clients that they were looking for so they could spend more time with the vendor, and
Mhm.
that they increased sales by 22% because they were getting 5 to 10 leads a month from all their vendors,
Mm,
and the vendors were opening doors. I thought, wow, what a great idea. And we implemented
good.
and it didn't have quite the same result, but it had great results from us. And nothing's better than when people see you actually listen to their ideas.
Yeah. Yep. That's what they want. People want to feel significant in the workplace. People want to feel respected in the workplace. People want to feel like their ideas matter and they're actually contributing. And if every now and again you get people, you have to be careful about who you hire, obviously. Every now and again you get people that really don't care about that. You got the wrong people. It all comes down to the people.
Yeah, I think that, don't you think over the years that people care more about being respected than they do about how much you're paying them?
Yep. You look at every survey that's ever been done. I think the last one I recall was Harvard. Every survey that's ever been done, respect scores higher than pay.
Yeah, I believe that as well. And I've
Now the pay's got to
experienced
be
it.
there. You have to pay competitively and
Right.
your benefit package and all that kind of stuff. But pound for pound, in any community that you want to have your company located in, you will be competitive with everybody else that's competing for talent and competing for your hires. All things considered equal, people will gravitate toward a company that shows them respect than not.
You write this book is for leaders of companies in denial about change. Is it likely a case of not wanting to spend money? Like the business, I mean, look at Kodak, look at Kmart, look at a lot of these companies,
Yeah.
and you always see the issue of that, especially in Kodak's case, they were making such huge margins on film
Yeah.
that they didn't want to make the investment and cannibalize their own business, and so somebody cannibalized them. What's your take on this?
Well, that's the issue, isn't it? You need to cannibalize your own business before somebody else does. And it's always the case that someone will cannibalize your business if you don't cannibalize. Now, where's the money go? Okay, they don't want to spend the money. Well, the money's going somewhere. They've got money. Okay, at least before they go belly up. Where's the money going? Dividends, shareholders, God knows what, but it's not going into reinvesting the business. And there's the rub because money, I don't have the money is an excuse. It's always the excuse, right? And I can't remember how many times I've heard this about we don't have enough resources. Nobody has enough resources. Kodak had plenty of resources, but I'm sure somebody over there was saying we don't have enough resources to innovate. We don't have enough resources for this, and even the largest companies in the world don't have unlimited resources. It's a matter of how you employ them and how you deploy them. And the problem is, here's the problem: when a CEO wants to invest a lot of money in a new initiative, right? And things are kind of going along fine. Things are going okay. We're making good money. Cash flow is good and all that kind of stuff. And they try to convince whoever they have to try to convince. It might be their board, it might be their shareholders, partners, whatever. When they say, if we don't, bad things are going to happen to us. That's a vague threat. It's a very vague threat way out somewhere in the future. And nobody likes to think about vague threats way out in the future. What I call CEOs like to live in happy land, what I call fat, dumb, and happy CEOs. I can't convince them to do this because, I can't prove that that's going to happen to us. Well, sure you can. Look at Kodak, look at Kmart, look at Sears. There's just a million examples out there of companies who rested on their laurels, but it's a lot easier to deny what is very likely going to happen to most, especially Rust Belt companies, than it is to confront it head on. And that's the difficulty because what I always do with my shareholders and all the people that I've been involved with, I paint two pictures. If you paint the one picture about things are going to be horrible if we don't do this, then nobody likes to hear that. But if you paint the one picture of here's all the great things that are going to happen to us when we do this, people will gravitate toward that. But you have to have both sides of it. We got to do this or else this is going to happen. And if we do this, here are all the good things that can happen. So you have to paint both sides of the equation. And you have to sell that up and down the chain, all over the organization, with your employees, with your shareholders, with your board, that here are the good things that we're going to get, and here are the bad things that'll happen. So, because if it's a choice of it's going to be really bad if we don't, most people will get turned off at that. They'll just say, okay. And if you just paint all the good things that happen if we do, people go, well, okay, but that's a lot of money and things are going okay right now.
I guess this question goes along further with this discussion. You wrote about the Encyclopedia Britannica making the decision after 244 years to go all digital in 2010, which was late, but they did it, and you wrote you would have taken a different path. Please talk
Yeah.
about what we can learn from that, and why didn't other dominant big players in the field like Smith Corona, I mean, they own the office market space, go from typewriter to laptops. And Kodak, they were the original patents of digital film,
Yep.
and they didn't do it. And Sears, with the most well-known catalog in the entire planet, way ahead of Amazon, and a big name with lots of money, and they didn't capitalize on it. Well, what do we learn from this?
Well, there's no secret that the digital world was coming. It's not like Amazon was hiding what they were doing and no one knew about Amazon. In the beginning, they were sort of, who's Amazon? But all of these, the digital transformation in the business world was a well known by everyone. And why people didn't, the Encyclopedia Britannica is a good example. I would have taken a different path because, at some point in time, you either get a growth strategy or you get a harvest strategy. And, neither one is good, neither one is bad. Shareholders can make that choice. They can decide, I'm just going to harvest it. And if I harvest it, I don't need sales, I don't need trade shows, squeeze every bit of profit you can out of it. That's an awful decision. And that puts the company on a going out of business curve at some point. And it may
Yeah,
be a few years in the future, but it always happens. And but the allure of existing profits and the allure of shareholders, they're kind of pesky in this way. They want their dividends. And the allure
yeah,
of you're gonna disrupt my dividend flow. Oh, no, 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 you can't do that. And because it's a distant future and it's a distant dark spot in the horizon, a lot of them just choose to play dumb and hope for the best. And a lot of these CEOs are just wanting to get to retirement. Let's see, and see, I can figure this out because if you do a hold and harvest strategy, you can. It's a kind of a simple equation, Mark. You look at the cost of doing whatever it is you think you need to do to transform the business for the future. Whatever you think that cost is, double it, maybe even triple it, and then you might even be close. Okay, and then you look at the profit that you can get by harvesting the business, and whatever you think that is, cut it in half. Because everybody's assumptions about these things, and you know this yourself, are always
yeah,
wrong. They're always wrong.
always. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like, oh my God, and so double your assumptions on costs and cut your assumptions on profit in half. And then you got a number there. And then it's up to the shareholders, which path do you want to take? But people who try to thread the needle and go down the middle and think it's going to be okay, spend a little bit of money here, maybe a little bit more money there, and sort of a defensive posture that didn't work out. And then Sears is a terrific example. I mean, they owned the catalog market, and they lost the whole thing for a lot of reasons. Encyclopedia Britannica should have cut their losses because they were way too late to the digital. I mean, they had guys going door to door selling stuff. Who does that anymore? They were way late coming to the digital game, and by that point in time, they just didn't have the cash to fund the transformation that they realized eventually they had to do.
It's funny when you say that. I one time had breakfast with the publisher of the Inquirer, Philadelphia Inquirer, our major newspaper, and it was a group that just bought them out for $550 million. And Amazon had come out with their reader, and they had a large reader that you could read a newspaper with. And I said,
Yeah.
now is the time to strike. Contact Amazon. You can be the first paper in the country.
Yep.
Get rid of the presses and tell people not only will you get the paper, you won't even have to move out of your bed. It will be zapped to you when you wake there in the morning. No going out, no worrying about it's wet, nothing like that. And he probably said what the Britannica guy said, which was people like touching books or like touching the newspaper. And I said, once they try this, they'll never go back.
Yeah.
I said, it'll
Yeah.
be pretty rare that they're going to want to go and do it. Nope.
Yeah.
They ended up, that business got devalued by 90% over the next 10 years. And you thought this was completely avoidable. And
Yeah.
Amazon probably would have underwritten it for them just to prove the point. So they
Mhm.
probably would have had almost like no expense and nothing but upside. I mean, think all these major papers, Blue, they own classified ads, they owned local advertising, and every single one of them, with a rare exception of the New York Times, because it's
Yeah.
national and the Post is national, all of these guys took tremendous hits because I think that they were greedy and wouldn't embrace the future and make the changes they needed to make.
Well, you hit on three key points. The greedy.
Yeah,
Everybody's greedy, right? They
yeah,
didn't want to look at the future they should look at. And this is why everybody kind of needs a consultant, an
yeah.
outsider to come in and say the emperor has no clothes. And this is why boards should do it. CEOs usually don't. They don't bring in consultants because it might make them look bad. That's what boards ought to be doing. Boards every 2 or 3 years ought to bring in somebody who really knows what they're doing and scrub up the company, look at the future, look at where they could be, what they ought to be doing, and get an impartial view of where the company's headed and what it ought to do.
And don't you think a lot of these CEOs that are brought in, especially in private equity, and it's not saying that you're like this, but if the thing is potentially making a lot of money, they're not going to, and their bonus is dependent on it. They're not like family companies that are owning something for 100 years, 50 years, whatever, where they're looking to make a long-term investment. They're saying, if I make this investment, that means there's less money for my bonus, and I'm only planning to be here 3 or 4 years. So
Yep.
do I really care that that this rural community loses this particular manufacturing plant? No, because I care about making a lot of money, right?
Mhm.
I mean, that's at the end of the day, if you tell these people your value is based on a 10-year going forward, and that's how your bonus is going to be structured, it might have a different result. What do you think happened with GE? I mean, GE was the most powerful, biggest, best brand in the entire world for the
Yeah.
longest time. And Jeffrey Olmo blew, I guess, the 30-point lead with a minute left, essentially
Mhm.
in a game. And
Yeah.
now look at GE. I mean, nobody talks about GE today. What do you think happened there? And what would you have done differently if you were in charge of GE?
Well, I have a lot of experience with GE and a lot of my companies, they were suppliers, they were, the customers and all that. And so this is just my view. I don't have
Yes.
any inside baseball. Yeah, GE focused on, especially after they bought, was it NBC? I can't remember. They focused on managing earnings in the short term. They were managing earnings to keep the street happy and to keep the stock price up. And if you're managing earnings, so they would move businesses in and out. They would take what is it, completion of contract, where you decide how much expense you're going to allocate to a particular contract. Well, we're going to be a little loose on that, so we make our quarterly earnings projection. And they spent so much time focusing on the here and the now, they didn't focus on the future. And in their defense, the street doesn't want you to be focusing on the future. They want you focused on the next quarter and the quarter after that, the quarter after
Right.
that. And they go, gee, I don't understand what happened to you. And I think in a nutshell, and GE got to be a pretty aggressive company with their customers and with their suppliers, and somewhat arrogant to some degree, where they wanted to control the entire equation, and they would take a particular industry and they would want to build platform products that the customers had to have GE. They couldn't have other suppliers, and after a while, the market sort of didn't like that kind of dominance.
Mhm. Yeah, and everybody thought Jack Welch was the greatest CEO of the last century, one of the greatest CEOs.
Yeah,
But was he truly one of the great CEOs, or uh, when he got in financial services, right place, right time, because interest rates started to drop
right,
tremendously,
right.
and the margins were that much better. So was he truly genius or his timing was amazing?
Well, I think it was both. Jack Welch is a good example. When he first became the CEO of GE, he made a declaration that we're going to have a revolution. And the revolution is going to start in Crotonville, which, as you know, is their, or was, or at least their training center. And he brought
Yeah.
every single manager into Crotonville and started reshaping the culture of GE. And one of the primary reasons why GE went from here to here under Jack, not everything that he did, not every single decision that he made, but one of the reasons that they ascended so quickly and so effectively was because he reshaped the GE culture, which had to be an awfully, awfully hard job. But he understood that was the number one thing he had to do if he was going to change the financials.
Interesting. We have a quote here from one of the listeners. I give the Queen Mary. Jack Welch said, I don't want the Queen Mary. I want to blow it up and build speedboats.
Yeah,
An interesting quote.
yep, yep. He was an interesting guy.
What criteria does an old line business use to determine if shifting from one platform to another to harvest, as you write, to take advantage of what a business has? And as I mentioned this example, the Philadelphia Inquirer 10, 15 years ago was worth 550 million. Today it's worth 50 million. And as part of a nonprofit foundation in Philadelphia, would continue to have a daily newspaper.
Well, hindsight's always 2020, right? And I can offer this advice. If you are if your products are older than I'm not if you're an electronics company and your products are older than about 13 months old, they're too old. But if you're a manufacturing company, particularly a Rust Belt company, if your products that are generating most of your revenue and most of your profit are more than 10 years old, there's doom on the horizon. There just has to be doom on the horizon because eventually they'll reach the adoption curve. Eventually somebody will come in and do whatever. So if your products are older than 10 years, you need to take a hard look at just, and it's a simple matter of math. What's not simple are the assumptions that you make. Simple matter of math. Okay, let's look at the last 10 years decline in our profitability or our unit volume, to be more precise, of our legacy products. Okay, fine, great. You see what you got a number there, right? And it's not good. And so assume in the next 10 years it's going to do the same thing at least, if not accelerate. And then you do a pro forma. What's that going to do to our business? At what point in time do we reach break even? And once you break even, then of course it's pretty much belly up after that. And that's how you decide if it's time to change platforms or to introduce new products. See what most companies do, especially Rust Belt companies, is they add features. They try to extend the patents or they try to add features and let this is a little faster than the old one or a little better than the old one so they can get incremental margin. They never really think about in a big way, how can we change the equation? How can we change the equation in our profitability and our product mix? And so if you're one of those companies, I guarantee you're on a going out of business curve. I just don't know when.
Nokia is almost 200 years old and has evolved from a paper company, which I didn't know until I read your book, to an equipment manufacturer to a technology company. What can we learn from how they kept reinventing themselves? And was the founding family still part of it?
I don't think the founding family was part of it. I don't really know the answer to that. But I do know this. When they were a boot manufacturer and a paper manufacturer, they had a grand vision for the future. What they did not do is they didn't say, we're going to be the best boot manufacturer in the world. And the greatest man, no, they didn't. They had a vision as to where they wanted to take the company, and they knew it had to be out of low margin. I mean, boots got to be low margin, right? Paper's got to be even lower margin. They said, we want to move into higher margin products, and we want to accelerate that curve. And so it wasn't a wimpy decision. But what they did, Mark, is as they moved forward, they said, okay, we're going to shed the businesses that aren't part of this vision and we're going to sell them. They sold one of their big businesses to Microsoft 10 or 15 years ago. Those are hard decisions. It'd be like Kodak saying, we're going to we're going to sell this part of our business so we can invest in digital, which is what they should have done, but they didn't. They hung on to the parts of the business that were making money. And so as Nokia moved forward, they dropped everything that didn't support the vision, which is a gutsy move. You got to convince shareholders and owners and all that to do that, and employees. And so they were completely committed to their vision. It wasn't a half-baked vision. It was like, well, yeah, I guess we can do this, but if it costs us much, I don't know about that. Or if it's hard, I don't know about that. So it was a pretty gutsy thing. At the end, the cell phone, iPhone, Apple overtook them in some of their ventures, but it was a gutsy move, and they backed it up with action.
Where does AI fit in, and will it be a job killer?
That's a good question. There are many as many opinions about AI as there as a job killer as there are about not. I've heard both ways. It's going to kill jobs. It's going to create jobs. I don't think that anybody really knows the impact of AI 10 years from now. I really don't, but I do know this. Today, 25% of manufacturing companies are employing AI. That's 25%. And every forecast I've looked at would tell you that in the next couple of years, over 50% of manufacturing companies will be using AI. They're using it in marketing, they're using it in manufacturing, they're using it in procurement, in all kinds of areas. But I do know this: if you're a manufacturer and you're not getting ready to use AI, you're not preparing to use AI, you're going to fall behind your competition. So I think AI is definitely the world of the future in any business that you're in. People tend to think I have to be in high tech to need AI. That's not true. I think you need it in any business you might be in.
I'm actually helping lead a new master's program that I've been pushing at my school to have an MBA focused on how to use AI to
Huh.
create new revenue streams and improve efficiency. And we'll
Yeah,
be the first in Asia to offer this
that's a
because
great
I'm
that
sorry.
that's a great idea, and that's a great program, because where people, particularly in manufacturing and maybe most of the world of industry, they don't know what it is. Is it machine learning? Yeah, I suppose machine learning plus. They don't know what it is, and they don't know how it could be employed in their organization. So people really do need an education on AI more than what they get out of the media or Google.
Yeah, I actually, two of my students are brilliant with AI, and they've already launched 3 businesses. And I partner with them on a business that I started with them called Business Plan Factory, just to learn how this works. And
Yeah,
we set up where you can create a business plan in 15 minutes by just writing one sentence. And all the
really.
templates and all my experience has been put into this. And I was blown away that they could actually make it happen, that in just one sentence and 15 minutes you had a full business plan with numbers that you could plug into a spreadsheet to figure out the financial stuff. So it's amazing things. The one thing we are finding out with ChatGPT in universities is that the students are not thinking. They're relying on chat when they're doing their homework. And so we
Yeah.
tell them, if you're relying on chat to do it, that means your employer, potential employer, doesn't have to hire you because
Right.
you're basically telling them that you're not having any original thought and that you're getting everything from chat. So why spend the money with you when their fingers can go and do it, or they can hire virtual assistants in the
Yeah.
Philippines to do it for a
Sure.
fraction of what
Yeah.
your salary would be.
Yep.
So this is a problem, not I'm sure just with our university, but universities around the world
Yep.
where students are using this as an easy way out. Uh,
Mm.
how do you feel about companies putting money towards stock buybacks instead of new product and service development?
Well, it's always a matter of where's the money going, how's it being deployed, and stock buybacks. They benefit the shareholders. You get a little more bang for your buck now as opposed to later on. But if you're putting your money to stock buybacks, you're not putting them into product development. You're not putting them into new programs to attract and retain employees. And so you have to be very careful of how the money is employed. It's always alluring, and it's always too easy to get the money out now. Everybody wants to get their money out now. I don't know any shareholder, I've never worked with any shareholder that said, I don't want the money now, give it to me in 3 or 4 years. And so you have to have some balance between stock buybacks and actually investing in the company, because stock buybacks are not investing in the company, it's rewarding shareholders.
Yeah, I think I'm totally against it myself. And
Yeah,
I
I don't
saw
like it.
that's what GE did. GE did. I mean, how many billions of dollars did GE spend on making their biggest investors happy, and when they could have used that money for creating new products? I just think
Right.
it's always. And I saw recently Harvard did a study on this, saying that those stock buybacks actually typically blow up. It's rare that they give you the yield better than developing a new product or service.
Right. And GE is a good example. A lot of companies are like this. The executives are looking at bonuses, and the
Yep,
bonuses,
exactly.
okay, if you got a long-term incentive program, which you should, everybody should, right? But if you don't, and they're looking at their bonuses this quarter or next quarter or this year, money talks. They're going to focus on what you're paying them to focus on.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. You write
Mhm.
about the demise of the mall, which is true in the US, but not Asia, as the culture is different and their version of Amazon is not as good as ours. I know because I'm here and I use Shopee. What is your advice to mall owners to turn themselves around? Because actually, malls have decreased by almost, the number of malls has decreased by about 80%.
Yeah, I don't know a lot about the mall business, but I do know this. Uh, they should have seen the demise of touch the stuff, go in, grab the stuff, look at the stuff. They should have seen the demise of that with Amazon if they didn't see it with anybody else. And so then malls typically have these foundation stores, right, on the four corners of the mall. Look what's
Yeah.
happening to them. Look what's
Yep.
happening to their sales. And so they're losing their foundation stores. And when they lost the foundation stores, I know a bunch of malls have done this. They sort of go belly up. They could have and they should have, and maybe in some cases it's not too late. They should repurpose their space, not to have foundational old line stores, but to have,
Yeah, the anchors. Yeah.
yeah, like WeWork or what's that company that does short-term office rentals? They could do that. There's a lot of things they could do in that space. But by the time they figured out it, when the foundation stores are gone, they can't financially sustain it.
That's 100% right. You see this all the time. Now, malls are repurposing them to be medical facilities or doctors' offices. At least
That too.
where I lived outside of Philadelphia, that's what they did the mall that I raised my kids on. A
Yeah.
question from the audience: do you think we will see a process like Bell Labs again anytime soon, where they're making long-term investments?
No, I don't. And that's a good question and a good example. Bell Labs was mostly in the business of research, not so much the development side of the equation. And then they would spin off their companies into startups and other companies that would commercialize their products. I don't think so, only because as good as that is, nobody wants to pay for that. If I told my shareholders, tell you what, I'm going to spend 5 million a year on pure research for the next 5 years. Let's just pick a number, and there won't be any yield on it in the next 5 years. I'd get some pretty cold blank stares back from them, and it's a shame because the amount and the number and the quality of the developments that came out of Bell Labs is pretty spectacular. But no, I don't think you're going to see that again.
I think everything was more patient back in the day. I don't
Yeah,
think the pressure was on CEOs to perform like they do now.
right.
Everything is the here and now. What are the three disruption phases that you talk about in the book?
Well, first of all, you have to prepare your organization. Let's say you're going to disrupt the market, and let's say you're going to launch a flurry of brand new high technology products or whatever it is. You have to take a hard look at your organization, particularly if you're a manufacturing company, and especially if you're a Rust Belt company. You look at the organization today, and you have to decide, what do I have to do with that organization to make it be the organization I need for tomorrow? That's the first thing you have to do. Take a look at an old line manufacturing company. They got long cycle times, they got long lead times. They've got all kinds of luxuries, if you will. And if they're going to become a higher tech company or move into newer markets that require faster speed, your employees aren't ready for it. Your processes aren't ready for it. Your infrastructure is probably not ready for it. So the very first thing you have to do is prepare your employees and change the culture from a mindset of we can do these things at our leisure. We can do these things when we want, got lots of lead time and so forth, to the situation where they react quicker and they're more mindful of what has to be done in the marketplace and so forth. So that's the number one thing you have to be. And it's not hard to do. Here's what manufacturing is today. Here's what manufacturing needs to be tomorrow. If you don't get the part of your organization down right, you might as well forget the rest of it, because all of a sudden you'll be thrusting your employees and your existing processes and systems into a world they don't understand and they can't deal with. That'd be number one. Then once you've done that, and only once you've done that, then you need to train and teach everybody in the organization the principles of innovation, like I described before. And that takes a number of years. You don't do that overnight. And then the third thing you do is you disrupt the market. You have to, I'll give you an example. My company is the publicly facing trade name is Miller Ingenuity, Ingenuity. I changed that. The actual corporate name is called Miller Felpax. Okay. When we decided that we were going to get much more high tech and move into that world, I couldn't go to the market with Miller Felpax. I mean, I got nothing against the name, but it's a throwback to an old product. And so we had to rebrand ourselves well ahead of the time that we would introduce new products. Because if I introduced new products before the market sort of said, oh yeah, Miller Ingenuity, I get that. They're ingenious. They do new things. Yeah, if you try to launch new products before you did that, no one would believe you. And so once you've got that rebranding done, then you go to the marketplace, but don't go to the marketplace in the same old tired clothes that you always used to. I'll give you an example of that. And many of your listeners know what this is all about. You go to a trade show, almost any industry, what do you see? You see a couple of sales guys standing in front of the booth like this, like, don't let anybody in here. You don't want to talk to anybody. And they're generally a waste of time, or they'll take out four color whole page ads in industry pubs that say buy our stuff because we're the best. Who the hell believes that anyway? And so you
Right.
have to find new way digital, of course, and social media. And we moved entirely, almost exclusively into the social media world. We've got people to handle that in all of the platforms. And when we do go to a trade show, and we only go to a trade show if we have something new to show, because if you go to a trade show with the same old stuff, you're wasting your money because everybody already knows what you got, or they'd be buying it. And we would have this very attractive woman who would go out into the trade show area out of our booth, and she would ask people a simple question. In the rail industry, by the way, safety is like number one. She'd say, do you care about safety? Who's going to say no to that? Of course they're not.
Yeah.
And then when they go, yeah, well, she go, I have some things I think could help you improve that position. Why don't you come over here? So she'd bring them back to the booth, give them a cool drink to refresh themselves, and an iPad, which had about a 2 minute, maybe a minute and a half presentation on generally what the safety products are that we have to offer. Now we've got them in the booth. Now we can talk to them. Now we can make some inroads into how they think about it. But most companies, they go to the same trade shows, and you know why they do? Because sales guys love to go to trade shows. They can hang out with their buddies, their customer buddies, their competitor buddies. Their wives like to come to the banquets and all that kind of stuff. And so you don't want to you want to retool how you have gone to the market if you want the market to see you differently.
Yeah, I agree with you that they love those trade shows,
Oh
especially
yeah.
they feel like
Yep.
if they collect a lot of business cards, they feel like they're accomplishing something.
Right.
Um, why is adjusting the corporate culture so important to reinventing the company?
It's everything. It's when people have worked for a company for many, many years, and they're used to doing things a certain way, they will resist. Everybody resists doing something to change. When we're the changers, it's great, but when we're the changees, we don't like it. And when you've got a group of employees that have been around for a while and you want to reframe how they think, you may be able to reframe how some of them think. You may not be able to. You may have to ask some of them to leave the company. And you have to understand what kind of a profile, what kind of employee do I need to move into the future? Not to take anything away from the people who have brought us here, because, you know, God bless them. I'm glad they did. But when you take a hard look at your organization, you have to understand what kind of transformation you need to make to take it into the future. And that's usually not the same organization that got you there.
Why is it just, what about so many companies letting many employees work from home or wherever? What do you think about that? And now companies are starting to uh, push employees back and tell them they have to come. And some companies like JP Morgan have so much investment in real estate in New York that they can't have those buildings sitting empty.
Yeah.
So what's your take on all this?
Well, you know, the companies that have so much to make that decision, because I've got so much sunk cost in my investment in buildings in New York, that's a really bad reason to make that decision. If it's the right thing to have people work from home, and in many cases it is, I have people that work from home and there isn't a thing wrong with it. And then in some cases, if you want to be competitive, you have to let people work from home. But here's the reason. Here's why a lot of these companies want to get people back in the offices. They don't trust them to do what they want them to do when they're not in the office. And that comes back to the same argument with me, Mark, is if you don't trust the people to do what you want them to do without looking over the shoulders, you have the wrong people, and you ought to get different people.
What do you think about though? Can you build a corporate culture if people aren't, if nobody's in the office and they're all working from home, or do you balance it out by having them 3 days in and 2 days working from home? And how do you create a corporate culture
Yeah.
where people actually get to know each other on a personal level so they work that much harder?
That's a good question, because that's one deficit of remote working. Is there is advantage to people talking around the water cooler, people it's, you know, it's, if you can just walk right to the office next to you and talk with someone about a problem, that's a lot easier than if you gotta, I don't know, I gotta call them, I gotta, you know, write an email and so forth. And so you have to balance that. I'll give you a classic example. My salespeople, none of them are in the home office, none of them. And it's a classic problem where salespeople, and I was one once, so I know this for sure. Salespeople feel like renegades. They feel like they're better than the people in the corporate office. They feel the
Uh-huh.
corporate office doesn't understand them, and on and on across. And so what I do often is I bring them all in, I bring them all together, and I get them interacting with people on like even like a quarterly basis, just so they can have that camaraderie. So you make a good point. You have to balance the home office the situation with the actual. But remember, just because they're in the corporate office doesn't mean they're interacting positively and effectively. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean it just because they're physically there. So you have to create situations and circumstances where I'll give you one example. In any company I've ever run, including the one I run right now, is we have one metric for the entire company: sales guys, marketing, manufacturing, and that's operating profit. That's the number. Okay. And if we don't hit the operating profit number, nobody gets anything. Nobody gets any bonuses. And then the sales guys go, yeah, but we sold it. No, what selling it doesn't mean a darn thing unless I can make money on producing it. And so yes, organizations have to have sub goals, obviously, to achieve the goal of hitting operating profit. But a classic example is this. I'm going to exaggerate a little bit. Quality guys get paid to make sure nothing ever gets out the back door. Because if anything gets out the back door, it could have a quality problem, right? I'm exaggerating a little bit. Manufacturing guys think they get paid to shove everything out the back door they can as fast as they can, so they make their bonuses. Again, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not much. I once had a guy that worked for me in manufacturing. At the end of the month, he'd ship out a bunch of product in trailers that had not been sold yet. And then on the first day of the month, he'd just drive around town. First day of the month, he'd bring them back in. Why? Because he got incentivized for getting shipments out. And when he wouldn't get if he wouldn't get a bonus unless we hit operating profit, he couldn't do that.
I like the whole operating profit thing for sure because I had salespeople and they were making money, but we were losing money on everything. It was a turnaround I
Absolutely.
worked on, and I said to them, "You only get your bonus and your commission if the guys on the back end can show that we can make a profit on this deal."
Right.
Because they were going like they were just saying, we'll give you this quote. It was a multimedia company. Uh, they would come in always the lowest quote, and they were getting 10% of the sale price. I'm
Yeah.
like to the owner, that's crazy. I
That's
said,
crazy.
they don't care. They don't care if you never make any money.
No.
They're going to make money. They're the only people going to make money. And they became very unhappy. So I had to fire the entire sales team and replace them with people who believed in actually, we all need to make money here, not
Yeah,
just the
right.
salespeople. It's crazy.
That's the problem. If you incentivize what you pay for is what you're going to get. If you incentivize sales guys to sell no matter what, they'll sell no matter what.
How much do unions impact stifling of innovation for fear of job loss? Is that a real concern?
Yeah, it is. I'll give you an example in my world. When we got into high technology products, our lower technology products were paying the bills, and they were allowing the high technology people to do what they do. And I was very careful to make sure that the people working in the high tech sector weren't perceived as the cool kids.
Uh-huh.
Because I don't. You were probably in high school once. I wasn't one of the cool kids, and I hated the cool kids. I wouldn't do a thing to help the cool kids, right? And so you have to make sure that you balance the cool kids with the people who are making the money for the company. So every time I got the company together to talk about achievements that the cool kids had made, I would always remind everybody, but don't forget, everybody else is making it so the cool kids can do what they were doing. So you have to be very cognizant of that. And I made a declaration, which is kind of gutsy because, if we go into a recession, that's a different situation. Said nobody's going to lose their job because of new products that we innovate. Nobody. Now, a lot of people have told me you shouldn't make that declaration, and it is a little bit gutsy because if we go into a recession, I can't control that. But you have to give people the comfort of knowing that they're not going to be displaced with innovative products.
What are examples of manufacturing companies that have embraced digital innovation and AI that are recasting themselves?
I don't know of any that are recasting themselves, but I was talking before about 25% of all manufacturers are using AI in
Mhm.
some fashion. And my proposition and suggestion to you would be AI is going to reshape them. AI is going to recast them. They don't know in what way yet, so they'll have to be prepared to be kind of versatile and fleet on foot. But AI is going to shape the whole world.
No question about it. We're seeing it at the speed of light here.
Yeah.
If you're an early stage company with a better product service than the industry, what should your positioning be as you write in the book?
Well, it's a very precarious position. If you're in that position where you're going to take on some sort of industry leaders, they will come and kill you if they can. They will lie about you. They will try to buy you. They will file suits against you. And you need to make sure that you have either some deep pockets or access to deep pockets if you're going to go against the big guys, because very few small organizations have beaten the big guys. Well, we all know who they are, Apple and companies of that but if you're going to try to do that, you just need to strap on your flak jacket because the competition, if they're any good, they aren't going to just sit around waiting for you to do that. It's not such a bad situation if you want to sell. You got a new product and you think you maybe don't have the deep pockets to go the distance, you can always sell to a larger competitor.
Here's the last question. Lastly, what kind of skills and background should old line companies recruit, and what training is required to give the company a future?
Well, you have to have, in every case, you have to be very careful of who you let in the door. You have to define the kind of culture that you want, and then you interview against that culture. You don't ask a person, well, are you flexible? Well, of course I'm flexible. You ask, open-ended questions to determine if they're flexible. to determine if they're open to new ideas, determine if they're committed. And so you have to have a set of values that back up your culture. We have 7 or 8 of them, some of them which are kind of universal, like respect and flexibility. Some are sort of, pertinent to our company, but you need to make sure that you have people who are willing to be committed to the mission and willing to go the distance in the mission. And you need to make sure you interview against that. Don't ever let anybody in your organization that isn't with your values. I'll give you an example. When we hire somebody, like for the factory floor, factory employees interview them. And they either give them the thumbs up or they give them the thumbs down. Who better to know who's going to fit into any part of the organization than the people who are there? And yes, the people that supervise them would interview them too. We have psychological interviews done. And so we're very, very, very careful about maintaining the culture that we worked so hard to build over the years. And if we get somebody in that made a mistake, we ask them to leave quickly.
I want to thank you for taking the time to speak to us. And I definitely have to get you to speak to my class on leadership by way of Zoom. So I'm going to follow up with you on this. And thank you so much for taking the time. The book was awesome. And I could have actually spent a second hour with you, and we didn't even get through all the questions I had put together. So everyone have a wonderful day, and hopefully we'll look forward to seeing you next weekend.
My pleasure.
Take care, everybody.